Philomythia podcast.
Wait.
Welcome.
Do you know what episode this is? I do.
Well, I mean, 8. I mean,
Yeah,
it just depends on if do we want to call those two-parters separate episodes or just
I would.
episode 6, part 1, part 2.
I would say let's do 6 and 7 and just see how it is. It might not work.
Yeah, then
but
I'd say
it feels
this is number 8.
Nice. Good work there.
Yeah, I think this is as far as we recorded with the other podcast.
Right. Yeah. We're making progress. Taking names.
On top of that, we also have actually released material now that people have been listening to. Thanks for listening, people.
Thanks for listening. Cool.
Feel free to comment, ask questions, whatever.
And I know some listeners have said they don't understand what we're talking about. So if you want us to talk about something, like comment, or you can email us at philomythia@gmail.com, and you can be like, hey, what the fuck are you talking about? What does this mean?
I'd love to get emails going. I want you to start all the way over and explain to me what the fuck you are talking about.
Right.
And I go, oh, okay. I mean, sure.
And so I'm the one who edits the podcast. It sounds fancier than it is. It's just putting everything together. But one thing I've noticed is that we haven't really talked about kind of who we're targeting this podcast to. And that's really people who play D&D and want to become DMs. Now, that being said, if people listen to it and if you like our podcast and you want us to talk about other D&D things or role-playing things, I'm totally fine with that. That was just the initial concept.
Even like just story-related things. Yeah. Like, I really have been wanting to like delve into like some stories that we love and kind of talk about that particular story and the things that you love about, it's maybe its roots, like how the story moves, not necessarily the actual plot points of that book, which that could be as well. I'm not saying no. I'm saying, get in and analyze a little bit with some of the stuff we really like. Yeah,
I'm totally down. I mean, that's in the name of the podcast, but that's kind of, it's all connected, I think in my mind, and I think yours as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and I've, just to put a stamp in time where we are here in the future, when you're listening to this, we're actually weeks in the future than what you're listening to.
Well, aren't we weeks in the past?
No, because maybe it is
it's
past.
Our past selves being released in the future.
Right. In the future.
Yeah.
So like we're confused about time, but just to give a timestamp, the movie Dune just came out.
Just dropped. Yeah.
Yeah, it just came out. Me and Eric just got back from our Dungeons and Dragons weekend with some of our friends from the Conan campaign.
And we might release some audio from that. I haven't listened to it. I don't know if you have.
I haven't listened to it either.
Yeah, so we'll see if there's salvageable.
I'm sure there's at least like 10 minutes of clips that we could just snip and throw around, because there's some funny things that happened.
Right.
But no one wants to listen to that. That we'd have to edit that thing down so hard.
Oh yeah, we're gonna trim the fat, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So there's that, and there's been just a lot of things that have happened since we last recorded an episode. So that's cool. A lot of fun stuff, stories, and
definitely
been reading more Blades in the Dark. Not Blades in the. That's what we've been playing Blades in the Dark.
Ember's Blades.
Yeah, right? I got a little bit further than that.
What part are you at? And we're gonna say spoiler alert really quick.
Oh,
so if you want to read them, this isn't super far, but this is going to be something farther.
They started talking about the how the name is weird.
Mm-hmm.
They were that old race,
Cacestrine.
Yeah, and he's talking to his Yumiel and someone else, and they're talking about why his father sent him to train.
Yeah.
And what that means, like how that's related to the Cacestrine. And all that. And dude, I gotta say, like, I'm really, really loving the book so far. And I know that they haven't even introduced that third main character yet.
Yeah. And she's not in it tons in the first book, but she's a heavy hitter in the second book. She plays a big role. She is in the first book, but she's more kind of, you'll go to her for a little bit and then you come back and you're with the two brothers primarily.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really good, really unique.
Oh, they're so weird and so interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm also like super pumped to try and like read Dune now.
Right.
That was like, I know apparently that was my grandfather, Harold Mazursky. He's that guy that's like all into NASA and stuff. Dune was like, I guess, and I could be misquoting this. This is from memory. So if my mom or my aunt hears this, then they're like, "You're wrong, Ian. I'm sorry."
We can always put a note in the doobly-doo being like, Ian's
but I'm
wrong.
pretty sure that was one of my grandpa's favorite sci-fi novels. And I'm as an adult, I'm starting to find a lot of things that I share with my grandfather from my mom's side that I had no interest in as a child at all, had no anything. So that's a weird thing to talk about, but it's interesting.
No, I mean, it's almost like that's how you know your family. It's the same thing with my dad, because my mom and dad separated when I was very young, but many of my habits and interests, like whenever I talk to my dad, it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely your son. Like there's no,
and you haven't even been around him, and that still happens.
He didn't influence me like as I was growing up, besides when I was like 1 to 1.5. So very, very young. But yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. That gives you kind of those stories give you a connection to your grandfather.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't get to know him. Like I met him a few times when I was young, but he passed when I was really, really young. Right. But I've definitely now like watched some interviews with him, and there's a whole thing. If you Google his name, there's a Wikipedia about him. Right. There's like all sorts of stuff. He worked with what's that guy's name that did the original Cosmos? Carl Sagan. Yeah. He worked like not with Carl Sagan, but they were
colleagues probably.
I don't even know if colleagues is the right word, but they were kind of like parallel in a sense. Like they worked
contemporaries
similarly. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like probably the
contemporaries right word. Is like you and I are contemporaries, so like you're kind of coming up at the same time and you're kind of at the same level.
I think so. Professionally. And again, my aunt or my mom could totally correct this, because obviously that's their dad.
Right. Hey, you know what, we're just telling stories, ladies.
Right. I'm just telling things. This is memory. I don't know. Could be inaccurate
stories.
But like listening to him talk and stuff, and just like looking at him, it's just like, oh man, I feel like me and him would have been friends. Yeah. And apparently he loved music, so me being a guitar player, I'm sure he would have loved that. Who knows? Yeah. But it's just weird. This attraction to Dune that I've never really had, other than just being like fascinated with kind of the concepts of it from afar, because I've never seen the original movie. It's pretty all the way through. Yeah. Never seen it all the way through. I've seen bits and pieces. Yeah. All I know of Dune is from what I've gleaned through pop culture and friends and people that just love the stories and say things about it. Right. But always liking some of it, and then seeing it portrayed in this really, really cool way makes me go, oh, maybe I do want to read those books. That actually the concepts seem really weird and cool. Yeah, it's deep. I've read, again, this could be wrong, but I've read that Herbert, the author, spent about a year just working on the ecology of Dune. So, oh, really? Yeah, so he DM'd hardcore. Like he world built the shit out of that thing. And he was also, I was reading some things because his son now writes and co-writes the books, and he was also a consultant on the movie, and he's also the holder of the estate.
So he gets to decide who has access to the IP. But his dad was a big survivalist, so Frank Herbert used to teach college, and he would take his students out and have them like get back to nature and like eat off the land and like, try to provoke questions like, who are you without technology and stuff, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, he spent a lot of time on that book apparently. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's happening?
What do you mean what's happening?
You're looking at something, looking at your phone, looking at your technologies.
It was family.
Speaking of which, okay. Yeah, and I think that kind of, like your experience with the movie kind of highlights why, if you care about stories, why movies are important or TV shows are important, because they can reignite passion for stories that may seem outdated or old or just kind of like, okay, that's lame, that kind of thing.
That's right. And that's an interesting thing. Like, I think that people that are wanting to make movies now, how we're getting a lot of these like remakes and stuff like that. And I understand Dune is a remake. I understand that. But I think it would, I'm going to use a weird word, that would behoove a lot of like young writers or young people who want to produce films, like go look into like some of those really strange old 60s, 70s books that are kind of cult classics. And if you like, if you fall in love with that story, give it a shot.
Right.
Because people that love stories really make the best things out of them. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think people love stories. If they're going to do an adaptation like Dune, they respect the material, and also they're interested in telling new stories too, I think, instead of just, at least for me, the thing that makes me jaded about Hollywood, or one of the things, is you can tell when a movie's main intention, not any one person, but just the production in general, is just to make money. And obviously the endeavor, Hollywood, is about making money, so it's fine. I have no problem with that. But you can make good movies and make money. It does work sometimes, And so I think, people who care about stories tend to make sure that's a priority more, So I appreciate that. I like it.
Well, yes. So to step away from Dune, because I haven't finished it yet. I still have a little bit left in the movie. And
do you want to know what happens at the end?
I mean, I don't know what happens in the end, but I have a feeling.
I'll tell you.
I have a feeling I know what's gonna happen, just due to how much I love stories. And
everyone dies.
Right. So I also, and I got that book that I've been reading.
Which book?
The Hideo Kojima, I don't know how to say his name. The Kojima book.
I think it's Hideo.
Yeah, I think it is too. And man, it's so crazy. He talks about another author that I've really wanted to read, because I love when they make like good quality movies out of her books. Mm-hmm. I love them, but I've never actually read any of them. And he talks about one in that book, and I was like, that's it. I'm reading one. Like, I have to. Like, I love the movies. It's Agatha Christie.
Oh, like they did a recent one, the Murder on the Orient Express, which was pretty good.
Bro, I loved it. Like, I loved it. I was like, what the like, what is this? And then I started discovering that a lot of really cool mysteries that have been made into movies are based on Agatha Christie novels.
Yeah, for sure.
There's even a funny one on Netflix with Adam Sandler in it, where they kind of do like, they take one of the stories, but they kind of give it the Adam Sandler treatment.
Is that the one with Jennifer Aniston where they're on the ship?
Yeah.
I wanted to watch that. I haven't seen it. But
I thought it was funny, man. I loved it.
Right.
But I'm, me, I love everything in Adam Sandler. I love Adam Sandler. But,
yeah.
But Agatha Christie, like, I have to read one of the novels now. Okay?
You should.
I want to, because I love those types of mystery books. I love that.
Whodunit?
That genre. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I think, that leads into the idea of like, and I know tons of people have done this, where people do like murder mystery D&D type things.
Mm-hmm. You even have like murder mystery, like those, they seem so lame when I was in high school, but like those dinner parties where you get
dinner theater
kind
and
of like
stuff.
dinner, like it's you and your friends and like somebody's the murderer. It's a similar role-playing game type of idea, I think.
Oh, yeah, because they have tons of stuff like that now too. You know, I've always wanted to try those boxes they send you where you have to like hunt the serial killer.
Right, the mystery boxes.
Yeah. I wanted to try one, but it's just like, it seems like better to have like a lady friend to do that with you. It seems like a couples type thing, and I'm not doing it by myself because I got other things to do.
You just got to own the weirdness. For me, it'd be like, great, I have this box. Look at all these things. Wait, you want me to like get up and do stuff?
I gotta do things.
No, I'm just gonna sit here and listen to my audiobook. Thank you very much.
I wanted to look and figure out a mystery. But
I want you to tell me about the mystery and figure it out for me. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I've never really, nothing with Christy has hooked me yet. But I know that she's very prolific. And so I'm sure her stuff is good. Mysteries in general, that's never been a genre, like book wise, it's hooked me. But like I love Sherlock Holmes, and I mean, most stories are mysteries in a way, you know? And so I think I would, if I found the right ones, I'd be like, oh, this is great. You know, just like any other genre. So should we talk about Blades?
Do you want to talk about Blades?
Absolutely. I want to talk about Blades.
I want to talk about Blades.
Okay.
Well, let's have you start because you were the GM, and then I'll talk about things as a player that also knows some of the rules as well.
Sweet. So we went on a trip last week, and our DM of the game, John, he wanted to take a week off, and I think there was a few other people who initially were going to take the week off. So Ian and I were like, fuck it, we want to play Blades in the Dark. We got the time. Like, we're going to play no matter what. So let's try it out. And so I haven't read through the whole book, but I read through a good chunk of the GM stuff, and I did very little planning. And then we built the characters, and we did like half a session, and it was so much fun. It was super awesome. Like, it's everything I want it to be, even just kind of half-assing it and not knowing everything and learning as we go. And I was just super impressed how robust the system is, how you don't like, I really didn't have to plan that much. And the game just kind of, once you go, as long as you let your imagination run, like, you're good. You can fucking play. As opposed to like, I mean, D&D, usually I'm doing like 5 to 6 hours of planning before the session, like day of. Like, it's a lot of planning and stress, and like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And D&D is great, and it's I feel like D&D, there's a lot of discipline that's valuable to learn, but I think Blades in the Dark is kind of like my heart as far as like what I want out of RPGs. So all I did as far as planning was I said, okay, we'll do 3 scenarios. They can either pick one where it's like they're getting hired, because in Blades in the Dark, if you don't know the game, you're basically a group of scoundrels called a crew instead of a party. So D&D has parties. Blades has a crew. You don't have to be a crew, but you're kind of this up and coming crew in this crazy city. I think it's supposed to be on Earth, but Earth has gone through this cataclysm. So everything's super gothic and dark and weird. And basically you're just doing what's called scores. So you're trying to make money and go up and kind of make your group bigger so you can compete against other factions in the city. And so I don't remember why I was saying that, but yeah. So we very little planning. So the one score was the safe. So somebody's hiring them to like go crack a safe, kind of classic heist. The next one was the assassinate a guy named Mr. Brass. I didn't have any idea who Mr. Brass was. I was like, that's a cool, evocative name to me. I named the mission Brass Tacks, which I thought was clever. And then the third one was going to retrieve like big barrels of Leviathan blood, which is what they use to create electroplasm, which like powers the city, essentially.
I think so they can like refine it into drugs too.
Yeah, and you can do things with the spirit world with it too, I think. Yeah. And it's highly volatile, and I think it's considered a controlled substance, so you get in trouble if you have it. So you can't, a civilian's not supposed to just have a bunch of this stuff. It's like you having plutonium or something like that. So that's all I did. That was there was a lot of reading, just getting a sense of it and then going through it. That being said, I mean, I've played enough Dungeons and Dragons to know how to run a session intuitively too.
Right.
So, what was your experience?
It was super fun. Just like with anything, you can tell as we're playing that we're sort of just throwing the rules out there, trying to see where they go. But it was super fun. I thought the interactions were fun, interesting things. It just sort of happened. Things would just happen. We overplayed it a little bit because, again, we just didn't know how to play, and we're just walking through in the dark, figuring it out as we go. And that's the best way to do it. If you're having a good time, then you'll figure it out. The next session we play will be a bit smoother. We'll go, oh, okay, that's how that works. That's how that works. Okay.
Right. And that was kind of the intention.
Actually, yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And so I'm saying the intention that we wanted is we achieved that. It was right up that alley of what we were wanting. And we ended up having a full group for a little while.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, because we initially were like, it's going to be, I thought it was going to be me and you.
Yeah.
And then maybe Harley later.
Yeah.
But it ended up being like Harley, Paul, Jerry, me, you.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty fun. And I think everyone that played really had a good time doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry, our friend Jerry lives on the East Coast. So the time difference is a lot from most of us. And he didn't even realize what time it was. Usually he's looking at the clock and he's like, wait a minute. It's 1 o'clock. I gotta go. So you said you feel like we overplayed some stuff. What do you feel like we overplayed?
It was the planning. Because we started planning things.
Oh, you guys went into full D&D mode.
Right. That's what I mean.
Stop.
We kind of went into this overplaying moment where it was more of there was a much more elegant and simple way to do the quote unquote planning, which it wasn't planning. It's pick one of these 5 things. And that's what you're just, how you're going about this mission.
Right.
And then it just starts.
Yeah. And one of the things it says in the book too is don't feel like you have to use all the rules right at first.
Right. Oh,
like
absolutely.
Do them as it makes sense for you and make the game your own. I mean, D&D says the same thing, but,
right.
But yeah, at that point, like, especially cause I'd read about the, like, okay, here's the kind of 5 styles of missions. But I just didn't even think about it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
I didn't think we did either because we were just trying to, go through it, but it was good. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We ended up doing things that were insane.
Yeah, it was really funny. And there were things like you don't really do your character background like you do in D&D. And so just out of the gameplay, like 2 of the players realized, because one of them was like a disgraced professor, that he was actually the professor of another player when that player was going to school. And so it was great. I had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it was super fun. And me and you had the little half a session before everyone played,
which was also really fun.
Yeah, it was super good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I can't wait to play it again.
Yeah, I definitely want to play more regularly if we can manage it. That's one I'd like to do more of, for sure.
Oh, I would absolutely play in a regular campaign of that. Absolutely.
Maybe we should do that on Sunday. Have that be a Sunday thing, because it really doesn't have to plan. I don't have to DM all the time either. Like, we could trade off.
Right, and if we have a few people that want to play, right? Yeah, we'll just come play then.
Yeah, and I feel like Blades in the Dark lends itself more to a revolving door, so you could kind of have a crew where it's like, oh, Paul can make it this week, so he can play.
Right.
And Jerry can make it. Oh, and they can't make it the next week. It's not a big deal.
Right. I think the same thing. And you just kind of have to let people run. Like, if you're not going to be there, you got to let them run the crew. Like, they're going to be in. You may come back and 2 people's characters have died, and now the new people, you'd be like, hey, what happened to so-and-so? Oh, we were out on a mission and he got killed.
he got possessed by a ghost and then
Yeah,
ran
and then
out
you
of the
give him
city.
a little tiny thing, and then it's like, oh,
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure. And
So yeah,
anybody who's listening, if you want to hear, we're going to record those, but if you actually want us to post the actual play for that, then let us know.
yeah.
So
It would be much. The audio will not be this because it would be a recording from Zoom.
yeah, it'll be typical. Like I'll probably still have my setup.
Yeah, me too. But other people don't.
You watch
this.
a lot of actual play, and like people have like the little earbuds or laptop speaker, and that's fine. You know, start somewhere. And I'll probably cut it down for like dead space, so it'll be a little more edited just for flow, like from a listening standpoint. So here's a question.
No.
What was your favorite mechanic that's different from D&D in Blades in the Dark? Because Blades in the Dark has a lot of mechanics that are not in D&D that are meant to kind of facilitate, hey, don't plan, just go. And as you run into problems, you have mechanics that allow you to kind of plan on the fly, let's say.
I guess like I like the flashback stuff. I think the flashback is an interesting one, but it's not my. I'm just stumbling over my words. I really like the special abilities and the loadout ideas. Those two mechanics to me are really interesting, because there's this cool factor to me of when you run into a problem, you can be like, oh, I pull out my sword. And when you first started the mission, you didn't have a sword, but now that will like be a thing that most of the players are going to now, like, as they think about that, they'll be like, oh, he had a sword the whole time.
Right.
You know
the
what I mean?
retconning's kind of built into the whole game.
It just flows, because then you just check off that thing. You're like, oh, I used one of those. And then, as we were playing, I didn't realize it, but then we were talking about the loadout, and someone's like, oh, so like you could use that same item again because it's what you brought.
Right. We kind of realized
like,
that.
Oh, I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, if it's so if it's a sword, if it's not a potion, it makes sense.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
So I really like that. And some of the special abilities were really, we didn't really get a touch on any of them, but just kind of reading through the character some of their abilities. It was just cool to see some of the stuff that I thought I wanted in the game. And then there was kind of like an iteration of that already in the game. Like someone had already was like, oh, that's cool. Kind of like almost like a warlock style type thing, that like a hex blade almost, or, something like that. And there it was right there. It's not a hex blade, but it's like you use ghost energy to imbue your sword or imbue your hands, and then it gives you a +1 dice to your attack thing or your skirmish or whatever that middle one is. Not
There's
skirmish.
Skirmish and
no, not that. There's the 3 action words. There's like.
Are you talking about your abilities rather than the actions?
Yeah, probably.
I can tell you right now. I have the book right here. What is it? Let's see.
Maybe my PDF is still up. That's it.
Names, actions, and attributes. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's probably the attributes.
Not abilities. We'll get into them. So insight, which is like mental, prowess, which is physical, and resolve, which is kind of personality stuff.
Yeah. So I think that the thing I'm thinking of gave you +1 to prowess, 1 die roll to prowess, whatever you used in it.
Mm-hmm.
It would give you 1 to that.
Right.
So yeah, it was just interesting how the game is played, and how it was funny, like when we were negotiating with for the contract with that character, Paul was like, 1 coin, you should pay us 2 coin. And me and Eric go, 2 coin? What the fuck? Because in that game, coin isn't necessarily like gold pieces like in D&D. 1 coin is like a grip of money.
It's like a whole sack of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have 2 coin, that's a bunch of money.
You're good for a while.
And then lo and behold, Paul has no idea what he's doing in this game, and he got us an extra coin payment.
Yep.
Which, it's just super fun. You could literally take, if someone knows how to GM the game, you could literally take people that have no idea what they're doing, give them character sheets, help them through. It was like 5 minutes a person.
It was really fast. Yeah, it was really fast.
And then be like, "Okay, we're going." And that's what we did with them. Nobody knew how to play. No one had ever read anything about it except for me and Eric. Yeah. And I think Paul a little bit.
Paul knew about it. He hasn't. He may have read the PDF, like the handout.
Oh, right.
But that's it.
And everyone played, and everyone did like exactly what they're supposed to. Now, granted, Roll20 did someone put love into that Roll20.
They made it. I feel like that's more streamlined than the D&D stuff.
Oh, 100%.
It's like somebody really put work into it.
So easy.
So intuitive. Easy. And everything, the UI on the sheet is you can click and fill in like stuff. So if you take stress, you can just click on the thing. And if you click farther over to one side, it'll do all the stress from left to right. So if you go farther over, you don't have to do them individually. Like lots of little details. So whoever did that, did the Roll20 stuff, like props to you.
Oh yeah,
you're a beautiful human.
So amazing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was super fun. I can't wait to play more. I've said it already, but
yeah, me too. I was excited. I noticed I wasn't really stressed, like prepping, quote unquote, like reading. I was really excited, and then when we played, I got even more excited, and it was like watching the actual play from Gen Con. Like it satisfied this need that I don't often get from D&D, which is weird. Now D&D fulfills other wants and needs that I have, but again, I think Blades in the Dark and just the Blades mechanics, regardless of whether it's the Blades in the Dark world, because there are other games that use the system.
Oh yeah, and I so want to play some of those.
Yeah. My mechanics that I really liked, I loved the flashback part because I love the ability for the players to build the world with you as a GM. Like I love the cooperative mechanics where I know it's so invisible you don't even notice it. One of my favorite mechanics is that I never roll dice, almost ever. It's all the players rolling dice. And so when the player rolls a dice to see if they do something, if they fail, that means if they're like fighting somebody, that also means the enemy succeeds. So the only rolling I'm doing, the only kind of involvement in that sense, like with NPCs, is just how tough are they? Like how expert are they? Like if it's an expert assassin, it's going to be much harder for your low level characters to defeat them, for instance. So I didn't even think about it. It's not really a feature they talk about, but I think that was part of the thing is I didn't have to worry about numbers as the DM. I was more story focused. Yeah. That was like, fuck. Yeah. And I also love the stress mechanic. So like I'm going to push really myself. So the resource, your playbook, it's called a playbook rather than a character sheet, but all the info for your character, it's almost like there's this resource management mini game going on the whole time.
Oh, it's totally that.
And there's always this tension because it's designed so you're going to get really hurt or die, or you might succeed, but it's going to be at a heavy cost. You might be completely traumatized for the rest of your life. So this managing the resource, not knowing what's coming, like, okay, do I want to spend 2 stress? I only have 5 left. If I do, that's almost half.
That's what happened to me.
Well, at first Ian was like, okay, he kept pushing himself, and I looked at his page. I'm like, wait a minute. Where's all your stress? And he's like, what? What stress?
Well, I thought I remembered using it a few times, and then Eric was like, no, you used it 3. This is your 3rd time. And I was like sitting there, and I was like, oh, it is my bad. So then I added my stress, and I had 3 left that I could use. And I was like, oh, because if you run out of stress during a score, your character is out. Like you're not dead. You're just out of you can't compete. You can't play in the scoring bar. You kind of have a breakdown or
something like you can't handle, you can't hang. Yeah. Which is great because that's like I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. And so when you go out, when they're done with the score, you can come back in, but now you have to take a trauma.
Yeah.
And the trauma is, I don't know, it's pretty wild. And I think this game also lends to the idea that the GM needs to kind of know what the characters are, like who they are, what traumas they have, and have like a basic understanding of them. So it makes the GM also learn about the characters that you created.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, although again, a lot of it is like you're going to discover through play who the character is.
That's what I'm. That's
So
what I mean.
you'll get to learn with the players.
That.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
drives the GM being familiar with who the characters are.
Yeah.
That in turn leads to more story being created or dynamic, because it's like, oh, I know this character that Harley's playing right now has 2 trauma, and it's cold and I don't even know another one off the top of my head. Soft, cold and soft, which don't make sense. So it would be super funny to see Harley play that.
Right.
So Eric would, as a GM, you would know like certain moments where you could be like doing something, you'd be like, and I feel like your character would have a reaction to this from being soft. And then the player can choose to be like, oh, I think so too. Or,
right.
No, I think this one's good. And he'd be like,
or explain to me why, if you're cold, why are you helping that street urchin right now?
Right,
like,
exactly.
How does that
and then
make
you'd be
sense?
like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And a lot of my job in Blade specifically is asking certain questions. And then the GM part, it actually has this procedure for here's your questions. Like, here's the things to ask. Like, this book is, the Blades in the Dark book is one of those books I'll take with me forever. Like, whatever edition of D&D I'm playing, I'm going to use Blades as inspiration, because I feel like especially the GM section is so good for anybody looking to make the transition. Just, okay, what am I doing? Because the DMG for 5th edition, I don't feel is very good at that. It has a lot of useful information, but like we've talked about before, it's never like, okay, here's what you do. Step 1,
right.
Step 2, Step 3, and in very simple, eloquent language, So props, guys. Good props.
So good. So good.
So we're having a romance with that game right now.
Yeah, and the system. I love these D6 systems that I've kind of stumbled into lately, because we played another game while we were out in California, is Warhammer Warcry.
Super fun.
And it's just like a simple little game of setting up one little combat battlefield.
It's like a skirmish game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And me and Eric, we probably played 4 or 5 games of it.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think 3.5, because one of them we didn't finish.
Right. And I played a game against Harley, and you played against John.
Mm-hmm.
So we got, pretty familiar with how the game kind of runs. And it was so much fun. Like and not one game I played was anything like the other game I played.
Right.
None of them were
totally
even
changed
close.
Up.
It was,
yep.
I mean, they're similar in the sense that I've got these characters and they do things, but the goal of winning the match, the combat I'm having to like do, sometimes like one of the ones me and Eric did, he just started running and he wouldn't fight me at all. He was just running to escape, and I was just trying to kill his people before they could get off the board.
Yeah. And
it was a pain in the ass. He won that one, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I got the fuck out of Dodge. Yeah.
But I almost if I could have killed 2 more guys, I would have won.
Yeah.
But they made it off the map.
Well, and one thing we should say is one of the things, and again, first episode we talked about emergent gameplay. Blades is heavily emergent, I would say.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a lot of the stuff isn't realized until you play. But also Warcry was very emergent in the sense that you have these 4 decks of cards, and those kind of set up the scenario. So what do you have to do to win? Mm-hmm. And you have a bunch of terrain that comes with the game that's kind of broken down, and there are planks and multiple levels. And so you have a deck of cards, you draw one that tells you how to set up the terrain, and also like special circumstances. So the craziest one to me was the first game I played with John. We got 2 twist cards. So like, here's a little twist on the thing. One was it was pitch black, so you had to be like really close. And the other one is our factions hated each other. So we got to like, when we hit extra hard. So it was just like pitch black, run up and fucking just beat the shit out of each other. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we just drew good for that. Like, we just drew right. So it was a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the emergent part of it is you choose kind of like 3 different squads out of your characters, and then you have to pick which like one is what. And then one of the cards that's drawn puts those squads in certain areas, and some of them don't come on the board until round 2 or round 3.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the, like, your game might last 4 rounds and that's it, or
Right.
3.
Right.
So sometimes those characters, when you like make those squads, you're like, I'm gonna put this guy there and this guy there, and then he and like your main squad you were thinking was gonna do something doesn't even come on the board
Right.
until round 3, making a whole nother thing happen that you're just like, shit.
Right. And most of the victory things seem to be like, you've got 4 rounds to win.
Yeah, you have 4 rounds to win.
So you may, if you put your heavy hitters in like one of the squads, and they have names like Dagger, Shield, and Hammer.
Yeah.
So a lot of times Hammer will come on the latest from what I played. And so you might put your heavy hitters, because the names don't really seem to mean anything. But the Hammer is kind of like Kadunk, has an evocative name. So you're like, I'm going to put all my tough guys there. And then they get a round and a half to
do anything.
To do anything. Like, that was wasted.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was super fun.
Yeah.
Blast.
It was really fun.
Like, I'd love to figure out a way to play that online, because that's a game that I'd be like, I'd hit you up and be like, hey, you want to go play Warcry?
Right.
I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll get on. We go play Warcry.
That'd be fun. If they could do some kind of VTT that was 3D, I think that would be
that would make it so much better.
Yeah. So
but yeah, it was a good time. That was super fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorite things, was like learning to play that.
That was really fun, for sure.
Because especially when John had been talking about it again. This is classic Ian behavior with these friends.
Mm-hmm.
John had talked about it. I immediately said no. Showed up to. I mean, I'm not talking about during the trip. Like, John had mentioned it in the past.
He mentioned it a bunch.
Yeah, I just poo-pooed it and was like, don't care about Warhammer, stupid. And then I get out there and I see that John has brought this mess of Warhammer stuff, and in my head I'm like, damn it, so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're all like, play it. And classic Ian is like, no. Then finally one night I'm like, okay, let's play it. Let's play it. Teaches me, learned to play, had a blast, loved it, wanted to play more, but Harley died and didn't want to play anymore. And then we all sat on the couch and we were too tired.
Well, here's the funny part about, because I don't remember what John was doing, but I ended up showing you guys how to play.
Oh, I remember what John was doing. We don't have to say, but I know what John was doing.
But we all were kind of blitzed out of our mind. Like, I was pretty drunk and high, and
because we're in California,
we're
man.
in California,
it's all legal out there.
Yeah, and I live in Oregon, and it's also legal. But it was like we just kind of hazed through it. We're just like, okay, do this now, do the next thing, and you guys learned it great. It's awesome.
Well, I learned it great.
So I learned it.
So yeah, Warhammer, Warcry. If you have a friend that's local to you and you're wanting to just do battles with them, so much fun. It uses a D6 system. It's very easy to learn.
And I've noticed about D6 systems too is it feels more intuitive when you're adding on more dice. Like, oh, this is making it like a much harder hit.
Right.
Basically, or, oh, this is, less dice is going to make it really hard to do the thing,
Oh, yeah. You're constantly like, 2 dice. What?
Yeah, for sure. Anything else about the trip or Warcry you want to say?
I'm not with Warcry. I mean, I definitely want to talk about, we didn't get a chance to play Spellfire, which is unfortunate, but there was, the time seemed, when we first got there, it's like, oh, we've got so much time. And then it was like, we've got no time.
Right.
So
there was a lot of wasted time too. I mean, it's supposed to be vacation. So you're just supposed to be doing whatever, but every day I'd wake up and it's like, come on, we're doing this. And it's like, fuck, I just want to sit here. God damn it.
And then we'd sit there and someone would be like, come on, we're doing it. And then everyone would sit for another hour. because
Waiting.
one person wasn't ready.
It's called
or had to
ADD,
do this.
folks. It's called ADD.
And one person would be like, I'm taking a shower, and everyone would go, no, and then they'd just say, yep, I'm doing it, and they'd walk off and do it, which is so
Classic.
within this group. It's so funny to see, because back in the day, me and Eric could bully people into like just listening to us, be like, no, we're not doing that, and they'd be like, oh, okay. They would listen. They don't do that now. No one listens to anyone anymore.
Yeah.
We're all big kids, and so when someone's like, we got to do this, they'll be like, I'm not doing that, and they walk off, and you're like, that's fair.
The shower thing was super annoying because I'd get up and it's like, okay, we're doing it. I'm like, fine, I'll take a shower later. I don't care. And then somebody else would be like, I'm taking a shower. It's like, really? That's what you, that's what you do when you fuck? Come on.
Oh, showering. Fuck. Why? What did you do last night? Did you just piss the bed or what? What were you just sitting?
I'm not going to say his name, but there's one of our friends who took like 3 showers a day.
I don't think he did while he was with us, but he does.
Oh, it was multiple showers a day.
Really though?
Absolutely. I don't know if it was every day, but I noticed like, oh yeah, I took one in the morning. I'm going to take another one now. Really? All right. Do you, boo-boo?
Yeah. Who gives? And I can't imagine like if it was a nice shower. Oh, I would love to take showers a bunch all day, every day. That's great. But the showers there were not good.
I guess that just shows my trashiness because I took a shower on there were 2 bathrooms, so the one that was closer to my room, it was fine. Just adjusted the head. It was like, this is, I mean, it took a second to heat up, but it was like, this is fine.
Yeah, like,
I don't know what people are complaining about.
There's no way I could have washed my hair in the other shower. The pressure was like a trickle, and I have long hair. It would have been a nightmare to wash.
Should have gone to the other one.
I probably went in the other bathroom like once the entire time while we were there.
Right. You weren't really staying. That was kind of the other side.
That was
of
the other
house.
side.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it wasn't. It was pretty much equidistant for both bathrooms, but most people were already using that one. So I was like, I'm just going to go use the other one. It seems better to divide up the bathroom area.
Plus, there's that vacation thing where you want to kind of establish normalcy because you're in a weird space. You're like, this is my bathroom. Like, this is the route I take to go to the bathroom. These are the pants I wear when I go to sleep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
This is my bed. Get off my bed.
So true, dude. Well, I'm pretty amiable. I think that's the right word.
I think you mean amiable.
It could be.
Yes.
So I basically was on the bottom bunk of this one room. It was a big room, but it had a bunk bed in it. And Jerry was initially going to be in there with me, but then that changed to John.
He wanted more darkness.
Yeah, me and John are probably the 2 heaviest guys in the group. And so John was on the top bunk, and I mean, I don't know if it was rated to hold him. It held him just fine. But
let's break this down though, because John is pretty short. So I'm 6'1". He's got to be like 5'6", something like that.
He's like probably an inch shorter than me. So he's probably like 5'7", 5'6", 5'8", somewhere in there.
He lifts and like he's friggin'
huge,
jacked.
Dude.
And so like
he's a muscly guy.
He picked me up when we went there. We went and got some like lunch, and then when he was leaving the restaurant, I was behind him, and his man back was just huge. Just like, what the fuck, dude? Like,
yeah, he's big boy, and I know that he weighs like upwards of 200, like 200 plus,
2 something, yeah.
And that's like plus. That's in my range as well.
Yeah.
So the first night we're there, I'm like laying on the bottom bunk. And he crawls up this, it feels rickety because it's made of metal. It's like, and I'm like, and I look up and I see the frame just buckle underneath his weight. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, oh, this is going to be so bad if he kills me with this.
It's going to be like Black Sheep.
And then, he falls asleep. I fall asleep. And this only happened the first night. He moved pretty hard or something, and I heard the loudest crack. And I looked, my eyes popped open, and I looked up, and then nothing happened. So I was like, okay, After that, I sort of just ignored it because he didn't. I was like, it's
you didn't
probably
die
not
the first night.
Yeah,
so
he's just gonna be fine.
It's fine. Innocent creaks until it's not.
That was a fun experience.
So it was a good trip, and
yeah, super fun. Super fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I think we're going to do it every year. Sounds like.
Yeah.
So
we did play a bunch of D&D. We can talk about the D&D.
Yeah, if you want. I'm wanting to get to one of these topics, but yeah, let's talk about it.
Oh no, let's get to a topic because
let's talk about it.
Well,
this will actually tie in, so we'll kind of jump back and forth. But I figured since some listeners are confused about what we're even talking about, and I noticed that D&D has a lot of jargon that makes no sense to people outside of it. So you sound like you know a lot about football after a while or something. Like you're just like, oh yeah, I got like 15 AC and he had a +2 to hit and then he rolled a crit and all this stuff. So I figured we just go through some of the common terms. Doesn't have to take a long time, but just so people have a general sense of what we're saying. So the first one is DM. What does DM mean, Ian?
That's Dungeon Master.
Dungeon Master. You can also say GM for Game Master, whatever you want. We've talked about that one heavily. What about PC?
That would be a player character. That is a character that is controlled by a player.
Yeah, and it doesn't, in this case, doesn't mean politically correct.
No, or personal computer.
That's not it. Nope. What about NPC?
That is a non-player character. That would be a character that is played by the DM, not a player.
Right. What's weird to me is that term has actually invaded the culture. Have you heard about this?
No.
So I think it's the alt-right uses it to talk about people who are like indoctrinated. Like you're just an NPC.
That's funny.
Yeah, weird, right?
That's a highbrow insult right there.
Highbrow insult, yeah.
Coming from the
That's weird.
Yeah, that's super weird. That's funny.
What about HP?
That would be hit points.
Hit points. What are hit points, Ian?
Hit points is a way of measuring your life force, how much energy you have before you die. Or you could be like, you're basically a sack of blood, and every time you get hit, some of your blood falls out, and it gets hit too deep, all the blood's gonna come out.
Right.
You're just full of it.
It's interesting you say that because there's D&D is super annoying sometimes, but it's hotly debated what hit points represent.
Yeah, I've heard this. Because
people say, well, it shouldn't just, you're not just a bag of hit points. So some people say it's like your will to go on or this or that.
It's a
dumb.
metaphorical
It's just
device.
basically, here's how tough you are to kill. Like, who cares?
It's all of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. That's why, like, in my brain, when we talk about things hitting us in D&D, and the DM's like, he cuts your stomach open. I'm like, my stomach is cut open, huh?
Mm-hmm.
My guts are falling out.
Yeah.
Weird.
Hey, you're a superhero. What are you going to do?
Right. And now so that's why I'm like, oh, well, I guess if I just drink a healing potion, my guts will go.
Yeah. You also go unconscious. You never outright die.
Right.
And as soon as you get one hit point, you're back on your feet. So.
Right. It's a metaphorical device mechanic for you to play the game. So there's a way to.
There's risk involved.
Even Blades in the Dark has a device for that. It's not hit points,
which is really interesting.
They have a device.
They found a way around it, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. And it makes it interesting because, like, you in D&D, for the most part, if you're like, I want to cut his head off, that's a whole different thing. But in Blades in the Dark, you can be like, I want to cut his head off, and the GM will be like, okay, well, we're gonna make that gonna be what's the hard one?
So it'd be like
risky, but
it'd be desperate position. And
desperate position.
Probably
with,
you'd have to be able to do like standard effect. If it was limited effect, it'd be like, well, you cut his throat.
Yeah, it'd have to be standard, right?
But you don't cut his head off all the way.
Right. So like that would be, to me, like, if you're trying to cut his head off and you succeed with the consequence, then that's what would happen. Like but if you succeed, then head goes right off.
Right. And I feel like Blades in the Dark kind of handles the hit point we'll call it the hit point problem with stress, but also you've got not wounds, harm. So you got these 3 levels, and if you get all your levels filled up, you take a trauma and you're also out of the game. Well, so you can die.
With harm, you'll die if you get a 3rd level harm and then another harm on top of that, you die.
Right, but I think if you get all 3 harms filled up, I think it's the same thing.
1, 2, and a 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, and a 3. I think you're out of the game, and you also take a trauma.
Oh.
I think you can do either or, depending. Like if you get another harm, like if everything's filled up and then you get harmed again,
then you die.
I think.
Yeah,
because it's like basically like a gunshot wound to the head.
Well, I think the way that because I think you're right, but I don't think it has to be the whole thing filled up. I think if there's a 3rd level harm and you take like a 1, then that it goes to a certain thing. But if you were to take a 2nd level harm on top of a 3rd level, that'll kill you because it would
too much.
I think it moves everything up when you take another harm.
Right.
I don't remember. I mean, obviously we'll look in the rules, but
yeah.
Again, here's us talking about mechanics that
we're still learning.
Sounds like this is harm. There's just 3 slots. You have a 1st level, a 2nd level, and a 3rd level.
And I think 1 and 2 have 2 compartments, so you can get 2 1-level harms.
Oh, I'd have to look at that. That's
2 level
cool.
harms, so you have a little more leeway on the minor stuff.
That could be very true.
Yeah.
Let's go through some of these other terms.
My favorite, TPK.
That would be a total party kill.
What?
That is when something happens, whether it's the dungeon master doing something or the players do something, and it ends up with every player unconscious.
That's right. And if every player is unconscious, it's not really a rule, but it's kind of an assumed fact that your party is dead.
Yep.
Which is kind of odd because if you're all unconscious, if you could stabilize, you would think you would be able to get back somehow. But that's generally what people do. Like if everyone goes down, everybody dies.
Yep.
AC.
That would be armor class.
Right.
That is the kind of the number that somebody has to roll to hit you. And you use a 20-sided dice to establish that typically.
And usually you'll add numbers to it. So if you're really strong, you might be able to add like a 3 to a 5 a lot of the time. Like it's easier to hit that target number, whatever it is. So if I have a 15 armor class on my monster and Ian's hero comes in and he has a +5 to hit, then all he has to do is roll a 10 and that gives him 15. Yeah. So very basic. Here's an old school one, but I thought it'd be fun to throw it in here. THACO.
THACO would be to hit armor class 0.
That's right.
And it's the old system that D&D used to use, and I used to understand it, but since I haven't used it in a million years, I don't remember it.
It's really archaic. I went back and tried to relearn it. I'm like, oh, this is why I hate THACO. This is horrible. This is like it's really weird steps. Math. It's got a lot more steps, and it's not one universal thing. It's like it depends upon the monster and the level, and like there's all these variables. Just like classes used to have different XP leveling rates as well.
Weird.
Yeah. Sorry, what were we gonna say?
I was gonna say I thought with THACO there was like it's not really a lot of addition. It's always subtraction.
Yeah. Well, AC used to be minus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were trying to hit, everything else was higher, so like you got more hit points, you're leveling up, but your AC as it got better went down. So if you had like a -5, that was really good. It's very counterintuitive.
Because I think the goal was to get like 0. You had to hit somebody, you had to get to 0.
Yeah, to hit armor class 0. Yeah, well, I think that was 0 was the baseline. That was exactly. That was the median. And there is legitimate math behind it, but it was you could tell it was created by like statistics nerds and like math nerds, like to do it to manipulate the stats, like how often you roll something. I think. What about AOE?
That would be area of effect.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Kind of how big whatever it is you're using. So if you have a spell or an aura or whatever you're using has an effect area. So it's not like a line. It's a circle, a square, a triangle. It has dimensions to it.
Some kind of open area. Usually it's a spell or some kind of attack that's meant to hit a lot of enemies, not just one. So like there might be 10 goblins kind of clustered in an open field, and a wizard casts fireball, and that has a 20-foot radius. So that would be an AoE spell.
That's the area of effect, just the 20-foot radius.
20-foot radius. Okay, last one. This one's probably like one of the ones we use the most in D&D is DC.
See, DC is weird to me. I understand the concept of it, but that's
difficulty class.
That's difficulty class.
Yeah. Do you know what it means?
Do I know what it means?
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Okay.
Only.
I'll go through it if you want me to. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Ian, do you not know all your terms? Ian.
I don't know the terms. I know what a DC.
Right.
I know what a DC is. Like.
Right. Well, DC.
You set a DC at 10. It's
Right.
easier. You hit it at 15. It's a bit harder. 17. That's a super high DC because you're rolling. Typically, it's a 20-sided dice.
Right.
And you have to hit a certain number to do something. It's kind of like the armor class.
Exactly. But for doing things, non-combat things.
Right.
And D&D kind of runs off this philosophy of we're just trying to hit a certain number or higher. So like maybe the DC is 15. So you're trying to roll a 15 on a D20 or higher. And then you add or subtract numbers to your roll depending upon how good your character is on that thing. And DC is an interesting thing if you think about it, because Blades in the Dark deals with the same idea by giving you a dice pool. So you have more dice to roll to try to get a certain number.
Right.
More.
And Warcry uses that same type of thing.
Right.
You're getting a dice pool to hit a certain number.
Yeah. So basically the numbers are there to represent how good your character is at something. So if you have more dice, it means you're better at the thing, or you have some kind of advantage that makes you temporarily better. If you have a better modifier, it works the same way. And again, modifier we didn't talk about. Modifier is just a number that you add to your roll.
Right. Or subtract. Whatever. Or subtract. Modifier would just modify whatever you roll, just to modify the roll.
So for instance, if your character you have stats, which you have like strength and dexterity, which represent the things that your character can do and their capacities.
Let's define that, since we're talking about it. So those numbers in Dungeons and Dragons are ability scores.
Mm-hmm. Also known as stats. They call them both.
Those are what kind of identify how good you are at these certain things.
Right.
And before Eric goes too deep into that, let's say, by the way, you guys just heard me plug in my computer because I'm a rookie and did not plug it in.
That's rude.
So with Dungeons and Dragons specifically, you have strength, dexterity, intelligence, constitution, wisdom, and charisma. Did I get all of them?
Yeah, you got all of them. You switched. Intelligence and constitution are usually switched. So you do the physical stats and then you do the mental stats.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now there are D&D games that have also started to apply a sanity and an honor stat.
And those are optional stats that are in the DMG. So you can look them up, and they broadly explain it. They don't really get into the details, but...
Right, because it's meant to be, if you want to use it for something if you want to.
So let's do this. Let's do this. I know I interrupted you, but do you have dice on hand?
Yeah.
Grab some dice. Ian's grabbing dice. Ian's grabbing dice. He's gonna grab the dice. He's gonna grab them real nice. He's gonna grab those dice and put them on ice, and then he's gonna eat some rice and roll big old dice. Dice, 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 dice. Ian's grabbing dice. He's rolling those dice.
I got my D&D set, and I got my Blade set right here.
Sweet. So let's go through a really basic scenario.
Yeah.
And we'll do two. So we'll do one where you have a positive modifier and a negative modifier.
Sweet.
So let's do the negative first, just because that's on my brain. So let's say you have a character with a strength of 8,
That's a -1.
So you get a -1 to your roll, and you're trying to do pull-ups, and we're going to say the DC is 15. So he's trying to
15 to do one pull-up?
You're a weakling, so it's hard for you.
Yeah.
I know. So he's trying to roll 15 or higher.
I'll have to roll I have to roll a 16 or higher because I have a -1. So I rolled.
Exactly.
I rolled a 1.
So let's explain. When you roll a 1, it's known as a critical fail. And if you roll a 20, it's known as a critical success. So critical fail means usually it's interpreted as something extra bad happens, but there's a lot of debate. Like, you don't want to punish your players. But if it's me DMing Ian with his weak character, I'd say, well, not only do you not make the pull-up, you slip off and the pull-up bar is kind of high. So you fall to the ground, hit your head, and take 1 damage.
Bullshit.
I know. It's horrible. Okay, so now let's do another one. We'll just use strength since we're already on it. Let's say you're trying to jump from one roof. What do you want to do?
Let's do the same pull-up, but with a strength. 2.
Okay, so you have like a probably 14 strength?
Wow, let's have an 18.
18, that's like 4. That's a 4 modifier.
Okay, plus 4.
So plus 4. So 15 is still the DC.
I rolled a 9.
So you rolled a 14, so he still failed. So 15 is more difficult. Like, you're not going to roll higher all the time. Now, the D20, what he's rolling, the 20-sided die, is what they call a swingy dice. So it means there's no bell curve on its numbers. Every number is going to come up just as much as the other one, which I think is 5% of the time. So that's why I think that's why they chose the D20 for the system, because they wanted that swinginess in the die. Where with D6s, I think it's different, but when you have a pool, you get a nice bell curve with that.
Well, so I'm gonna roll. Let's just say
Ian wants to win.
No, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do a dice pool instead of a D20. Just to. So I have 3 D6.
Let's do Blades in the Dark mechanics for this.
Okay.
So Blades in the Dark, a 1 through 3 is a fail, or they don't say fail. They say bad outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Bad outcome. 4 or 5 is a partial outcome. They call it something else.
It's a good outcome with a consequence.
Less good outcome, something like that.
Well, I think they say it's success with consequence.
Right, but the way they phrase it, the words they use, it's a little bit different. Like, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like it's a partial success essentially. And then a 6 is a really good outcome.
Yeah,
so
success.
So what are we saying you're doing? Should we say you're in combat this time?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna try and because I'm confronting some person here in this bar.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and just pull my blade out and stick him in the belly.
And we're not going to worry about positions or anything like that. So you're just trying to, there's no DC, but he's just trying to roll a 4 or higher. If he rolls a 6, it's really good.
I have 3 dice.
3 dice, so that's pretty good.
Oh, baby, I got 2 6s.
So that means that's a critical success. If you get 2 6s in Blades in the Dark, it's really, really good. So you absolutely stab him in the belly like the horrible scoundrel you are.
Well, since it's a crit success, can I add that I pull the blade to the side and just gut him?
Sure. But that also, there's a blue coat in the corner of the room that takes notice from your flourish.
I'm going to pull the blade out and kind of put the guy next to me and be like, ha ha ha, like we're friends as he dies. And I'm going to hold him up so it doesn't
hold him
look
up
like
at the bar.
Happened.
Are you at the bar or are you like in the corner?
I'm over at a table.
That's beautiful. Good work. So that's how that's the very basic way that die rolls work, and that's really those 2 systems. That's how they run for every roll you make. Whether it's, I mean, combat of course is a big part of it, but whether you're doing social or something physical or personality wise or anything like that. So
yep.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Let's get some other terms that people don't know.
Go ahead.
We don't have more because we don't know. Tell us what you want to know, Please.
I have more.
Oh, he's got more. Let's do more.
So what about saving throws?
That's a hard one to define because I feel like the definition is baked in the two words. It is a saving throw.
Well,
saving throws are used.
When do you roll it? Let's say that.
It's a lot of the time it's from something happening to you. So you're trying to save from some sort of thing happening. It could be an attack. It can be a spell. It could be something falling from the sky. It could be. There's so many reasons that you could come up with to have someone save, but it's usually a reaction to stop something from happening or to lessen the effect of something happening.
Right. So there's an explosive triggered to a door. Your character fails a check, which we'll get to in a moment, and they walk in the door thinking that it's safe. The bomb explodes, and then the DM has you roll a saving throw, probably dexterity if it's a bomb, to see if you can at least minimize the damage. So you're not just taking it in the face. So it's kind of a way for the players to have some control over. I mean, it's not really control your rolling dice, but have a little more say in, it's not just, you open the door and it explodes and you die. It's like, okay,
No, you're dead.
You're going to, roll a saving throw. Let's see if we can minimize this a little bit. So along with that, what about checks? So like a dexterity check.
That would be, that's kind of the same thing as a saving throw, except it's usually initiated by the player doing something rather than reacting to something.
Right. So
now those are interchangeable. You can have somebody do a check for a reaction to something.
Right.
But usually checks are like, I'm going to run and jump across the gap between two of these houses and be like, oh, okay, let's see you do a dex check then.
Right.
A dexterity check.
Right. But traditionally, saving throws are always reserved for when you're reacting to something, and checks are always like the player is taking initiative.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Okay, actually, speaking of initiative, what about initiative?
Initiative is the mechanic in D&D that's used to determine who goes first in the scenario. It's combat oriented.
Usually
sometimes
combat. Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be like a chase or anything where time becomes important to something. Initiative is usually rolled to place each character doing their action.
Right.
Which we can define that next.
Ooh, that's another one. Yeah. There's more and more just piling up.
It gives everybody a time frame when their action happens in the 6 seconds that a turn takes within Dungeons and Dragons.
And I've also found, this is more of a homebrew thing, but I will use initiative when the party is split up sometimes, which happens more often than not. Not necessarily completely split up, but maybe they've split up to check 2 parts of the dungeon or something like that. So I'll put everybody into initiative just to use that as a way to track, so somebody's not getting left out a whole bunch. So I'll do the initiative for one group. Okay, you guys go, and then do the initiative for the other. So there's a good trade and back and forth trade off, which actually works pretty well. I didn't think it would work very well, but it keeps things flowing a little more. So you can use it for other things. It's basically just to track. Again, you're using a number, and you're using a 20-sided die, and then you're adding that number to it. Initiative.
So action would be defined as an action. No, it's in Dungeons and Dragons. Each turn you get an action and a bonus action. And within that turn, you also get a reaction, but that doesn't happen on your turn necessarily.
Right.
So an action allows you to cast a spell, to attack, or to do something that would involve taking an action, doing something. Movement is not an action, typically. You can use
it is considered an action. It's a type of action. That's what they call it in the manual.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Because it's just not utilized. Right. It's not utilized by your action, but you can, again, there's it sounds complicated, but you could use your action to move again if you wanted.
Right. But if you think
If you're
about
not
it,
gonna attack.
so like if you move double your movement, you can't take an action.
Right. But you can't say that you get 2 actions per turn, because you don't. You get
Right.
1 action.
But I think what they're saying is movement is a type, it's a specialized type of action, just like reactions are. It's still in the wheelhouse, but it's not necessarily, it's a different purpose, you know, than just a normal action. One thing I should say is actions are usually relegated to the area of combat. So you don't necessarily, you don't have actions like you would on a board game when you're just like exploring a tomb, or walking down a road, you know, going to the next town or anything like that.
Right.
It's more
Actions
when
usually
things need to
happen
be
within
really
initiative.
specific. Yeah.
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 Within initiative is when you typically start utilizing action.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we talk about bonus actions and stuff like that, what is around in D&D?
What is a... Sorry, I heard that statement.
Pop
as
quiz hot shot.
something totally different. A round is when everyone goes, like when everyone takes a turn during initiative. So whoever went first, when it's back to them, that's round 1 is done. Now we're on round 2.
Right. So let's say you have Billy, Bob, and Thornton. They're 3 separate people, not one person.
Okay.
And Billy has an initiative of 16. Bob has an initiative of 12, and Thornton has an initiative of 8. Billy goes first, and then Bob, and then Thornton, and that would be round 1, and then you would start over. And you just do that until combat's resolved. Usually, who you're fighting you either knock them out or subdue them, they run away, or you kill them, or vice versa.
Right. Or you die.
Yeah, yeah. One of the groups is getting hurt. How long does a round last for in game time? Like how long
6
does it?
seconds.
Right. So not in real time. It takes much longer to get through a round than that, but it represents 6 seconds in the game world. So it's supposed to represent something happening very quickly. Most combats don't last for more than 3 rounds, something like that. Like they happen pretty quickly.
Combat's quick within the game time, not within the people time.
Yeah.
The
Not
people
within human time.
Human time is so much more for combat.
Yeah. What about bonus actions?
Bonus actions are things that it's usually abilities or extra things you can do that are defined within your class, but there are I'm pretty sure there are general bonus actions that people could use as well.
It's usually specific, I think.
Yeah.
It's usually like you have to have like an ability or a spell or something that allows you to do it.
It'll say use your bonus action to do this, and that'll be what you can do with your bonus action. And so typically a turn in D&D is movement and attack, sometimes a bonus action.
Right. Or a spell,
typical.
which may not be an attack, but like I'm going to cast haste on this person.
Right.
Or
That is true.
Kind of controlling, battlefield control, that kind of stuff too. And bonus actions usually represent something that you can do really, really fast. So actions take a little longer, like firing a handgun would be an action where casting a cantrip might be, it so well that you can do it very fast. So it's something it's supposed to represent things that are very ingrained in your character. And then we have reactions. What the reactions, Ian?
Reactions happen typically not on your turn, actually. Like if someone attacks you or a spell goes off near you or something happens to a teammate, it's usually defined within your class. It says use your reaction to do this, and it tells you what you can do. And that is, reactions are done outside of when it's actually your turn, but you only get 1 per round.
Right. Unless otherwise stated. But almost always it's 1. And they're kind of like saving throws in the sense like something happens and then you get to have a say in that. You're not just taking it might be if somebody attacks you, you can attack them back.
right,
or something like that.
That's one of them. Like there's one of the bonus actions that comes to mind for me is when I was the warlock during the D&D in person,
Mm-hmm.
I could use a bonus action to attack with my familiar.
Right. And
so.
what is a familiar, Ian?
A familiar is a little animal companion that you typically summon with magic.
Right. And
I had a little imp who was pretty sweet.
It's interesting because if you look at the spell Find Familiar, it's not actually permanent. So like in the strictest sense of the rules, you actually have to go through a huge process to really make this thing like, oh, this is my companion all the time, kind of thing. We've had it really easy where like Ian and I in the Conan campaign both had Tressum, which are like winged cats, and we got to control them. They had their classes, like they leveled up. It was totally not the way it's supposed to be.
Basically like another player,
like
but just controlled by us.
But it was super fun. It was fun to have.
And now they're, I don't even know where they are last. They're just at Golden Fields, I imagine.
Mlem has disappeared, but he's with
my
character
right.
Pock.
Mlem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I have things for Pock, but it's too hard to get John to do behind the scenes stuff with that. Last one, there's plenty more, but these are just kind of a good handful. We've already done too much, but this is a good handful of like, this is what we're talking about, is class.
Class.
Yeah, that's a hard one to find, I would think.
Defining class. Class is like it's not your job, but it's
right.
like, it's kind of what you are.
Right.
So there's, like warlocks, wizards, fighters, rangers, druids. There's so many classes.
Right. Well, I think that initially, this isn't anything I've read. This is my assumption by the way the game was kind of, the language used and also the way the game was played, is that classes used to be kind of your profession. So you had, I think there were only 3 classes. There was a warrior or fighter, I think is what they were called, a wizard, and a cleric or something. So there was kind of more, you could see kind of like, oh yeah, this person went to wizard school and now they're like the court wizard. But then as things have gone on, you have like sorcerers who are born with this power, or warlocks who made a deal. So I feel like the idea of what a class is has changed quite a bit.
Oh, for sure.
I would just say a good way to go ahead.
I was just saying, then you have subclasses, but
right.
Go on with what you were saying.
We won't even talk about subclasses right now, but I feel like really class is just a vehicle to express how you want to play your character. So if you want to be more like, I want to be in the thick of combat, you can pick a fighter who can use all the weapons and can do a lot of physical things and can lift portcullises and such. Or if you want to be, kind of your classic wizard, you pick wizard, you can do spells. If you want to be something weirder, where like, oh, I want to be like a Dante figure where I made a deal with the devil, there are warlocks where you can, doesn't have to be the devil, it can be a fae creature a la Dresden Files, or it can be like a eldritch horror type being. It can really be whatever you want. So there's a lot of options, but I feel like it expresses like my character concept, whatever I want that to be,
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I think that's good amount of jargon for our listeners today.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to say? We're going to talk about D&D more, I think.
What's that?
I think we were going to talk about D&D more, like the D&D trip.
Oh, I mean, we can talk about, me and Eric created separate characters than what we normally play to do the in-person. Because I know our DM and I had a small understanding of what he was going to try and throw at us. I created a demon slaying machine.
Ian went full min max.
Oh yeah, I went full min max,
And
like 100%.
while we're on it, what does min max mean?
Min maxing basically means hacking, not even hacking, utilizing the strengths of your character in a what some would say game breaking way.
Right. It can be. You're basically looking at how, especially if you multi-class, so you have more, you're a fighter and a wizard or something like that.
Right. And you
how those
synergies.
Interact so you can really maximize what you do mechanically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Picking up items that you know will enhance this, doing like beefing up certain stats so they're high, and then dropping ones that you're not going to use. It doesn't matter if you have a -1 in strength, because I'm not going to do anything based in strength.
Right.
And just, knowing the game to the degree that I can, I know a lot of things to make stuff better and know what not to pick, because I'm like, oh, that's not going to be helpful in what we're doing. Now, it sounds like, oh, wouldn't you just do that anyway? Well, I mean, if that's the campaign you're playing and that's what you do, then yeah. But sometimes people will pick up abilities or things within their classes that aren't necessarily combat driven. They're more narrative driven, or they're more interesting for role playing.
Right.
And I did not pick anything like that. I picked everything based on the idea that we were going to fight, and that was it. I did that.
Right. And again, min-maxing is one of those kind of purgative terms you hear on the internet where people will use it in a bad way. Yeah. Where they're like, oh, you're just a min-maxer, kind of thing. I think it's one style of play you can do. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it, especially like Conan campaign is super combat heavy. Like just fighting monsters all the time. Heavy. Yeah. And so it works well for that. But
it worked beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah. You were definitely suited for the thing. My character, I honestly, once I started playing, I was like, I just want this guy to die. Like, I'm bored.
Yeah, I remember that, because there was something in his character was about to die, and I was like, well, do you want me to get you? And you're like, no.
You're like, you sure? I was like, I don't care, whatever. Just because, again, I made a more just concept. I usually go for concepts centric. And it didn't necessarily work for me on my end. I don't think it was bad for anybody else, but it didn't necessarily work for me in the campaign. Right. Like, it would have been better for me for what we were doing, just to min-max, do something like that. Mm-hmm. So, but it was fun.
We killed a lot. I think the total experience we got for each character was upwards of 30 or 40,000 experience.
It was a lot. We went into hell, and did we kill Baphomet?
No, we killed a Balor. We killed a Pit Fiend. We killed some other weird fox demon. Right. And then we killed the colossal red dragon that was...
Oh, that's right.
It was actually just an ancient red dragon, but our buddy John has the colossal red dragon miniature, which it's not miniature. It's huge.
Right.
We killed that, and then I don't remember the name of it, but it was that blood demon. A Soket or something like that. I don't remember. Yeah. So yeah, but then we killed that, and it was, it was this huge giant blood demon that was all crazy, and it's a fun time. It was some interesting thing happened.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We obliterated the demons, though. Thought that they were gonna.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're all level 18.
Level 19 now.
Well, yeah, but when we were playing through it, it's like when you're high level, the DM better find ways to make it challenging, or else you're just going to mow down through everything.
Well, yeah, and it's hard, man. Like, threatening high level characters is a challenge because you feel like you should just throw more at them. Mm-hmm. But that's not what threatens a high level character, because my character was sitting on like almost 200 hit points, and I don't think I went below 100 ever.
Right.
So like just throwing bigger and badder things is not going to threaten the party. Like so DMing for large, heavy hitting parties, like it's like a whole new game.
Yeah, definitely.
That you have to.
Yeah. I think that's why there are tiers of play too. And at least in concept is like when you get to that 4th tier, which is the last 4 levels, which is 16 through 20, your characters are basically of a different nature than they were when they were in tier 1, which is the first 6 levels. So 1 through 6, where you're really vulnerable and really squishy, and a goblin can kill you. And then you get to, you know, that high end stuff, and it's kind of like, okay, now I'm the D&D equivalent, you know, in power of like a billionaire. Like my life, the way I live and the rules I play by, totally different. Totally different kind of challenges, you know?
Oh, yeah. I was hoping, I mean, it didn't happen, at least not that we know, but I was hoping that Golden Fields would be burned to the ground.
John's not going to do that. You're going to have to do that if you want it to be burned to the ground.
I was hoping because that red dragon came down. It was like, it's on fire. And I was like, burned.
Right. Yeah. So, but it was fun. I think, I think the Conan campaign is like, obviously we have to be in person. It's not fun on Roll20, but it definitely, that style of play works better with miniatures. Like, I feel like there should be a way to have less setup time, because every time we go to a different place, John needed like 2 hours to set up a new set piece, you know? So that was a little hard, but we made it through. D&D is a hard life. It's hard. Like a penis.
And I'm sure we'll upload eventually just some pictures from it that are
Did we take
table
pictures?
shots and there's a bunch of pictures.
Oh, nice. And Ian,
I have a bunch.
Ian did record some of it too.
I recorded the last thing, the very last day we were playing. I think it was like on a Monday.
Right. So we might put some of that up.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how it is.
Maybe. But I love D&D. It's fun.
Yeah, it's great. And
it's a good time.
I had a good time, and I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to us talk again.
Because we're going to keep doing it, so you better like it. Better get used to it.
Hit us up if you have questions. Hit us with that email again there, Mr. Blood.
Polymythia at Gmail. Oh, I'm sorry. Saying the wrong thing. Philomythia at gmail.com. And feel free to hit us with questions. You can in the comments section, you can also post questions, whatever works for you. Oh, yeah,
for sure.
Questions, comments, concerns, insults, but only one insult per person per episode. So that's how it works.
That's funny.
So they're going to come at some point. You're ready. Ian's ready.
Oh, I'm so ready.
That's one of his fetishes. He likes people calling him mean names.
Yeah, mean.
Really mean.
I don't care.
And on that note, you want to sign us off?
Yeah, I'll sign us off.
Sign us off.
Stay sweaty.
Oh, hey, listeners, you've made it to the end. Give yourself a prize. Maybe a little cupcake or some coffee or hot chocolate, you know. This is the credits, and we have links to all the things. So check down below and you'll see things to the link tree, and the link tree links to the other links, and there's links to be had. Also, Jerry did our music. It's super badass. If you want to check out all his stuff, we have a link to that too. It's on SoundCloud. So remember to roll high and take a point of inspiration.
Like, share, subscribe.